I think companies should see whether there are changes, what the other states are doing, whether there's federal legislation, which I think is imminent and I expect it within the next 10 to 15 years. But they should not wait to prepare for this. My sense is that the California Consumer Privacy Act's restrictions on selling are not going to be eliminated by January 1, 2020 in California. They will more likely be popping up in other states. And if there is a federal law, it would be quite likely that any company that is now working on identifying, selling, eliminating it where it's not necessary, or qualifying it to bolster user control and company control, quite frankly, over where the data goes, will not regret that later and say, oh my God, I wish I hadn't done this work. I think they will need to do that. So I would say yes to the see, no to the wait, and therefore ultimately no to the wait and see approach. I think companies should act now to prepare for the January 1, 2020 deadline. I want to say one other thing on that, and this is only for any viewers who happen to be in the California legislature. If you keep changing this law throughout 2019, which I think is a good idea, and I made a number of requests in my open letter to you, that we should have some corrections of errors in the bill. But if you're changing it also substantively, which both sides are requesting, then I think you should strongly consider the impact of retroactivity on companies and whether it wouldn't be appropriate to give everybody another year to prepare for this and maybe move the effective date, not just the enforcement date, but the effective date to January 1, 2021. Companies are already working on this, and they could benefit from another year after the legislative process is finalized. We have more than 40 bills right now floating in Sacramento. Many of them have very good points. Some of them are very controversial. And if they are about to be passed either this spring or maybe in the fall, I think companies should have a little extra time to prepare for that. And I think it would also reduce the risk from the government's perspective that cases would be brought that raise the constitutional concerns regarding retroactive changes of the legal environment, given that the law has and probably will continue to have a one-year look back, which right now is to January 1, 2019. And so if companies are now looking at the current version of the law to prepare for January 1, 2020 with the 12 months look back, and we're changing the law throughout 2019, and then we're expecting the Attorney General to come up with regulations to reflect the changed law, I think it is unnecessarily rushed, and we should give another year to everyone to adapt to whatever the final version of this law will say by the end of this year. This is not a wait and see to companies. I think they should see and start working on it. And I definitely don't recommend to get their hopes up, but I think from the legislator's perspective, it would be a wise consideration to give another year after the dust settles on what the final wording of this statute is.